It seems clear that Derek Carr is trying to play week one, but the question remains for which team? We got all that and a little bit of lanyap for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, rookie contracts might be signed as early as today. 7th round pick Fadil Diggs, absolutely a player to watch during rookie minicamps. And Derek Carr is trying to play week one, but the question remains, for what team? We got all that and much more for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time, for making us your first listen, being an everydayer on the show here, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox, no console needed. Head over to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. The New Orleans Saints and Derek Carr situation, still not clear, still no clarity, still no resolution at this time, but that is expected to happen soon. And after the newest report, which this time comes from Ian Rappaport over at NFL Media, NFL Network, it sounds like the idea here for Derek Carr is to avoid surgery, which is not shocking. That was always going to be the expectation, was that there was going to be some push to try to avoid surgery in this situation. Lots of reasons to avoid surgery. One, it stinks. You don't want to go through surgery. Two, he's already had surgery on the throwing shoulder before. And then, three, typically you just try to avoid surgery. And so I get the idea here. I understand where things are going with all of this. This sets up for the opportunity to be able to say, hey, he's trying to rehab, he's trying to rehab, he's trying to rehab. And then maybe the rehab doesn't work and then he doesn't hit the field. But there is it sounds like, concerted effort for Derek Carr and from Derek Carr to rehab the shoulder and be ready to go for week one, which is a far cry from the, hey, he faces, a season-threatening shoulder injury and it could require surgery and very unlikely that he'll be ready for the beginning of the season. Now, all of a sudden, he could be ready for the beginning of the season. The details on this just seem to change with every new report. And so the big question for me and the big thing for me with all of this is try to get back on the field week one. Fine. Great. Right. The injury is one thing, but the other side of it is still, where does he play? Are he and the New Orleans Saints going to just really come out of all of this and say, okay, you're the starting quarterback, you're out there week one? It's what Mickey Loomis said during the post-draft presser when he said Derek Carr is the starter. Derek Carr said during his sermon over in Las Vegas that, quote, nothing's wrong when it comes to him and the New Orleans Saints. But that is just so not what everything else says, right? Contract disputes, demanding trades, sought after departures, requests for raises that weren't upheld, a restructure that apparently didn't want to happen, all these other things. At what point is all of this sort of, we're working towards a solution, just about saving face? Or how much of it is completely genuine? And then how do you sell that to a fan base that does not embrace Derek Carr and a fan base that Derek Carr has not embraced? How do you sell that in the midst of having drafted the highest positioned rookie that you've drafted at the quarterback position since 1971 in the actual NFL draft, since 1981 if you include the supplemental draft, and then bearing in mind on top of all that when the season begins, that rookie that you spent that 40th overall selection on, which could have been the big-bodied wide receiver, could have been so much, that quarterback is going to be 26 years old when the season starts. So you're really going to say, no, sit until you're 27 and then go out there and play? It doesn't make sense. Something's not adding up somewhere. And so a part of me wonders how much of the kind of lip service of everything's fine, he's the starter, nothing's wrong, nothing to see here, yada, yada, is really just about everyone trying to make sure that the eventual divorce, the eventual split, which I still believe is on the horizon, whether it's before this year or whether it's after this year, that the eventual split at least looks cleaner for both sides, right? The idea here is you try to make sure you're presenting yourself as an organization in the best light, and you give the player the opportunity to present themselves in the best light. Like, it would be no surprise at all to me, for instance, and this is just me speculating, but looking at another possibility. It would be no surprise to me that you go, he's rehabbing, he's trying to be out there, he's going to try to get out there week 1. And then it gets close to week 1, gets close to training camp, all this stuff. He's not out there. Well, the rehab isn't necessarily working just yet. He's not going to be ready for week 1. So we're going to push a little bit longer. And then week 6 passes. And then, you get a little bit deeper into the season. And it's like, you know what? The rehab's not working. He's going to go ahead and get the surgery. And then so he tried his hardest. The Saints tried to make it work. Financially, it has no, financially, there's no residual effect here. It's either he's on the team or he's not on the team. It doesn't really matter. You're talking about a difference of $1 million. Doesn't matter. I mean, difference of $1 million is big for you and I, but difference of $1 million for the New Orleans Saints, not so much. And then he gets the surgery and then is, done and ends up somewhere else for 2026. And therefore, it looks like everybody put forth this big, great effort to get him out on the field. It came up short. And then, hey, but at least we all tried. And then bang, right? Then everyone kind of walks away looking pretty good out of it. I get it. I think it's a good approach, honestly. I think it's a fine approach. Like, you're not going to trade him anywhere if there is truly this concern of a shoulder injury. No one's going to be looking to grab him unless they're really, really desperate. And look, teams like the Indianapolis Colts who don't have an answer at quarterback, maybe that's a situation that they would be interested in. But because there's very few teams they'd have to bid against on the open market, their kind of impetus or catalyst to pull off a trade after June 1st makes zero sense, or isn't there, I guess I should say. But it doesn't mean that they won't do it. I mean, the Indianapolis Colts have made bad decisions before, Jeff Saturday, for instance. And so it could be a way that the Saints go is to just kind of like slow burn this out so that everybody walks away okay. Everybody walks away happy. Everybody walks away with what they want. Derek Carr gets his fresh start somewhere else at some point in the near future. The New Orleans Saints get to turn the page. And this is the time to turn the page. You've got a new head coach. Not only do you have a new head coach, with the exception of less than a handful of coaches, you have an entirely new coaching staff. You're going to have a new offensive system, a new defensive system. You're going to have new things on the special teams side under Phil Galliano, as well as, of course, changing rules in the NFL when it comes to special teams kickoffs in particular. You're going to have potentially a new quarterback. You're going to have new regime. You're going to have new approach. You're going to have new culture. You're going to have new identity. It's time. Like, it just makes perfect sense for this to be a split. But I don't blame anybody for trying to make sure that that split is as amicable as possible. If that split were to happen, we have to acknowledge that there is still always the opportunity too that Derek Carr absolutely takes snaps as a New Orleans Saint in 2025. And I think fans are going to hate it. I think the Saints are going to have a very hard time selling it and all those other things. But if the Saints feel that that's the best quarterback, let me rephrase that. If Kellen Moore thinks that that's the quarterback that's going to win him games, kind of just have to give Kellen Moore what it is that he wants. But based on the selection of Tyler Shough, who, make no mistake about it, was Kellen Moore's guy, from what I understand, I don't know if he sees Derek Carr as the way to win the most games or the way to have the most successful 2025, which might not necessarily be about winning games, but in terms of building that new culture, building that new identity, building all of those other things. So it's going to be very, very interesting. I'm so intrigued to see how this all pans out. It is one of the wildest, most, circuitous stories that I've covered ever, it feels like. And I'm so interested to see how this all plays out. So we'll see what happens with Derek Carr, but it does sound like he is trying to avoid surgery. Maybe that ends up being unsuccessful. Maybe he does avoid the surgery and plays in New Orleans. Maybe he does avoid the surgery and plays somewhere else. There is still a big time amount of possibilities here. So we'll continue to track it and keep you updated as we go through. Coming up next, I wanted to hone in on a couple of players when it comes to rookie minicamps, my apologies. And Fadil Diggs, the 7th round pick, is going to be one of the biggest names that I'm going to be keeping my eye out on tomorrow. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Did you know that your Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K can turn any television into your Xbox without a console required at all. All that you need is a paired controller as well as a subscription to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you are off and running. You're out there playing EA Sports College Football 25 in your hotel room without having to have lugged your console around. It's a great way to go about it, great way to travel. And if you're somebody like me that didn't want to take on the upfront cost of buying an Xbox, this is a great alternative as well. That's why I ended up getting my Amazon Fire TV stick 4K for sure. So head over to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and a compatible controller are required. And this is available on select devices, including the Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and the Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. All right, family, rookie minicamp kicks off today, and I'm so excited to be out there tomorrow because I'm looking forward to seeing big number 40, Fadil Diggs, a 6'4", 257-pound stand-up edge rusher, could be exactly representative of the future of the New Orleans Saints defense and where things are headed under Brandon Staley. Now, look, I want to be very clear about what I'm saying here. Fidil Diggs is a 7th-round pick. I'm not trying to put too many expectations on him or anything like that. I'm not saying that he is going to be the future of the New Orleans Saints defense, but he is representative of where things are going and what the changes are for this New Orleans Saints defense. Let me give you a couple of reasons why. Fidil Diggs, first of all, 6'4", 257 pounds. That is not the typical edge rusher prototype for the New Orleans Saints that we are accustomed to seeing under, Dennis Allen in the past, where it was 6'5" and above, 270 plus pound guys. Carl Granderson out there is a great example. He's out there working his butt off right now in Sacramento at just under 280 pounds. I think the D-Line Vids folks said it was like 278 or something like that. So that's the typical prototype for New Orleans. But Fidil Diggs comes in and brings more of a Leonard Floyd-like build, a more Samson Ebukam-like build. And I highlight both of those guys as guys that were successful edge rushers under Brandon Staley over in Los Angeles with the Rams and beyond when it comes to Leonard Floyd. And Fidil Diggs brings that. So I think that's one way. It's a shift in the prototype because the new role offers a new prototype. The new role is the next reason why I think that Fidil Diggs absolutely represents the changes going on for the New Orleans Saints defense. The new role is that of a stand-up edge rusher, right? 3-4 base front or 3-4 odd front, which could be the team's base. We'll see which way they go. But that outside linebacker, that's your pass rusher. That's who Fidil Diggs is. And speed, and more speed. Fidil Diggs at 6'4", 257 pounds, ran a 4.57 40-yard dash during the NFL Combine. Absolutely excellent time for a defensive end, especially of his size, right? We're watching guys his size running the 4.6s, 4.7s in some cases, and he's out there blazing a 4.57, which was the fastest up until James Pierce Jr. ran, right? James Pierce Jr., of course, ran in the 4.4s. And so what Fidil Diggs brings in terms of speed is something that Brandon Staley talked about ahead of the NFL draft in his WWL radio appearance, where he kind of highlighted this situation of highlighted the value rather of speed on defense. He talked about being able to, of course, counteract the run game as NFL teams are running the ball a bit more. And of course, the outside run game, all these other things, but also being able to manage those pesky mobile quarterbacks that have given the New Orleans Saints so much trouble over the course of their time because of the lack of speed on defense. Fidil Diggs absolutely brings that. So he checks a lot of those boxes. And as a 7th-round pick, having worked with Elijah Robinson in the past, who is like a rising star in college coaching, will eventually be an NFL coach, I'm sure of it at some point, is representative of what the changes are for this New Orleans Saints defense under Brandon Staley. And I think it gives him actually a pretty good shot, even for a 7th-round pick, a pretty good shot to make the roster. And I don't say that about a lot of 7th-round selections, right? You're always talking about, 7th-round guys, you're hoping that maybe they make the practice squad and stuff like that. It's kind of how we talked about Josiah Aziram last year and everything. It's kind of how we're talking about Maliki Matavao, Matavao, who is the other 7th-round pick, the first 7th-round pick from this year's NFL draft class for the Saints. But Diggs, to me, because of the role that he plays, because of the prototype that he brings, and because of the speed and motor that he brings, just a guy that never stops, is always working, is a 3-time team captain, has leadership qualities, has worked with one of the best defensive line coaches in all of football, and then now ends up working with another one of the best defensive line coaches in all of football in Bo Davis, but probably working also more closely to Jay Rodgers, the edges coach. I think that he just gets, no pun intended, a little bit of an edge here in terms of what role he fills and the kind of lack of competition that he's going to have there and the exceedingly obvious talent that he has at the position as well. So Fidil Diggs, absolutely somebody that I'm very, very interested in seeing. Another player that I'm really looking forward to seeing is Jonas Sanker, who's going to be coming in out of Virginia, the safety, box safety guy, can play down in the box and is just this elite level tackler. Really, really good playing close to the line of scrimmage, very disruptive player and all that. I'm very interested to see what his role is going to be, how it grows over the course of his rookie season, and what it ends up meaning for a guy like Tyrann Mathieu, what it ends up meaning for a guy like Alontae Taylor. Like, where is it exactly that that Sanker ends up finding his playing time? And does that impact one of these other veterans? Not in terms of keeping them off the roster or anything like that, but does he cut into snaps by the time that the season gets to an end and things like that? Like, Tyrann Mathieu is really the one that I'm watching here because he has that incentive-based contract that's based on the percentage of snaps that he plays throughout 2025. And so is that indicative of the at least preparation to potentially end up reducing his snaps towards the end of the season? Or are they just worried about, like, hey, he's had some injuries in game, stuff like that, and so protecting themselves in case there's a larger injury that costs him games, which, to Tyrann Mathieu's credit, didn't miss games. He just had games where he couldn't fit, or where he didn't finish and stuff like that. So, but he never missed a game. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of where things go and how Sanker pushes some of these other guys and earns his playing time. And so I'm really excited to see him here in rookie minicamp because it might give us a little bit of an indication of more about Brandon Staley's defense and more about what Sanker's role could potentially look like, how they're preparing him, what they're preparing him for, so on and so forth. And then finally, of course, Danny Stutsman, right? Like, everyone, I think, is excited about Danny Stutsman because he is just this energetic, awesome presence. And you want him on your team. You want him on your defense. You want him communicating and working with everybody and all that. And so I wanted to pull the focus back down to him. We talked about him a little bit yesterday's show, where I talked about kind of him being maybe a candidate for the green dot, like the communication device and everything, to where he's kind of quarterbacking the defense and all that. But even beyond that, just how is he utilized on the field? Is he playing on the inside? Is he playing one of those outside linebacker spots? Maybe not the pure edge rusher spot, but the, hey, I'm over here as a run stopper / I can drop back into coverage spot. Or do they put him in the middle of the defense? I think middle of the defense feels likely, but we'll see where things go in terms of how he's utilized. But I think he's going to be a ton of fun to watch, if nothing else, just on the field, the way that he'll, he's going to be pumped to be around. He's going to be this year's Bub Means, this year's Josiah Zerum. Those guys were so just pumped to be on the football field at all times. I think Danny Stutsman's going to be that guy as well. And speaking of these rookies, they might be signing their contracts this weekend, but a historic event in the NFL might impact when Tyler Shough signs his deal. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. Look, if you're a small business owner, LinkedIn Jobs is going to become your best friend, maybe even your best business partner, because LinkedIn Jobs makes it so that when you clock out, they clock in, and you can actually see your workday potentially start to come to an end when that clock hits 5. LinkedIn makes it super easy for you to be able to post your job for free, to share it with your network, and get those qualified candidates all in one place with that super expansive network that's there. They even have tools as well to help you write job descriptions, give you deep candidate insights as well. It's all the stuff that makes 72% of small businesses say that LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires, not just candidates, hires. They're helping you get it done. So post your job for free today at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Again, post your job for free, linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints are reporting for rookie minicamps today, which means that rookie contracts might be signed by the time that you're taking in this episode, actually. But there is an interesting wrinkle that could present itself year after year after year after year after year after year. We see second round picks become a little bit delayed. It happened with Alontae Taylor. It happened with Isaiah Foskey. Happened a little bit with Kool-Aid McKinstry. He signed a lot sooner, but like some of those other contracts didn't get signed until June. I think it was when they re-reported for either OTAs or mandatory minicamps. But it's not unusual, right? It's something we see all around the NFL because typically what happens, and look, there was a historic event that took place with a second round pick this year that might have an impact on this year's second round pick in Tyler Shough. So if you see something come out from one of us that says, hey, 8 of 9 of the New Orleans Saints rookie class has been signed, don't be concerned. Don't be worried. It's not like, oh, Tyler Shough's not wanting to sign his contract because of uncertainty with Derek Carr. He's going to sign his contract. He doesn't have a choice. Like, it's going to eventually happen. However, there might be some back and forth, and it's because of something that happened with the Houston Texans. Typically, when the second round picks are delayed, the reason why is because the higher you're drafted in the second round, the more guaranteed money you typically get. So your first year will be guaranteed, but your second year might not, or your third year might not, or something like that, or a portion of your second year contract, or a portion of your second year salary might be guaranteed, stuff like that. And so that's usually like some of the stuff that ends up pushing some of this off is that offset language, things like that too. But the further you get down as a second round pick, the less guaranteed money you get. So you're always kind of waiting for the second round pick above you, right before you, to sign your deal before you sign yours, or your team is waiting for that team to sign theirs, and then you sign yours, stuff like that, so that you're like in the range of guaranteed money, and there's not like a big drop off because you signed your contract first, but then the person that was drafted once above you or once below you ends up getting more guaranteed money. It sets a bad precedent, all this other stuff. You don't want to be a part of that, right? And you want to make sure you're getting the appropriate guaranteed money based on the market value. So that's my kind of spiel on that. But what happened is that the Houston Texans gave Jaden Higgins, former draft boo of ours, a fully guaranteed contract for the first time in NFL history for a second round pick. Fully guaranteed contract. Pick number 34 overall. Tyler Shough was pick number 40 overall. So he was the, second selection? Yeah, second selection of the second round. Fully guaranteed contract as a second round pick. First time in NFL history. And so because of that, it might actually expedite the idea of Tyler Shough's contract because it sets up, okay, well, that was the 34th overall selection. There's 35 through 39, and then there's where you are. Hey, you get a guaranteed second year, you're probably in a pretty good situation there. So it might either expedite the situation or it's going to make it way more complicated because that is an unprecedented historic moment in the NFL that no one's talking about. And it ends up impacting a little bit of what those negotiations might be in terms of guaranteed money, stuff like that on that second round pick. So we'll see what happens. But I wanted to highlight this because if you take in this episode before rookie contracts are done, you'll be ready. If you take in this episode after rookie contracts are signed, you'll know why what happened. And so either Tyler Shough is going to wait a little while on signing his deal or not, whichever one it's going to be. But that's kind of where this sets. But that moment right there, that 34 overall, Jaden Higgins getting that fully guaranteed contract as a second round pick, first ever in NFL history, massive, massive moment for the league because that now becomes the precedent for next year and the year after and the year after, right? And so that ends up changing the way that these second round contracts look moving forward, which might expedite them or might slow them down even more than they were already slowed down. So we'll see where things go, but just wanted to highlight that so that you won't be surprised in case something like that ends up happening. The other thing that I'm looking at are the veteran tryout players that are going to be in attendance on, today and throughout the weekend. As I mentioned, there would be about 5 New Orleans Saints that are considered technically first-round players because they didn't accrue a vesting year by playing or being active for 6 or more games in a season. So there's these 5 players that will be there. Tackle, Josiah Aziram, 7th-round selection. Travion Flulin, who came in and joined the team late last year, cornerback. Tight end Michael Jacobson, who's been with the team for many years or for a couple of years now, but hasn't accrued a first season because he hasn't been active for more than 6 games in a year. Running back Xavier Valade, super excited to see him. We didn't get a real opportunity to see very much of him because of when he signed with New Orleans last year, but excited to see what he's got. And then tight end Trayton Welsh, who joined the Saints last year as well. So those are the 5 rostered players that will be there during rookie minicamps. They're not trying out or anything. They're just getting in some work because they can. So those are the 5 players to expect to see that. Kudos to those guys for doing a little bit extra work, but also those are some of the players that like you're kind of limited in terms of how many you can have out there. So those are the players that we'll see out there that are already on the roster. In addition to, of course, the drafted rookies, that 9-person draft class, the 11-person undrafted free agency class, which includes like a punter and all these other things. And then, several other rookie tryout players, including a couple of names to watch here would be probably, I would highlight Tulane defensive lineman Patrick Jenkins had a great pro day, local pro day and Tulane pro day. He was awesome out there. And I would probably also highlight a couple of wide receivers a couple of wide receivers are going to be out there. SMU wide receiver Roderick Daniels, as well as UTSA wide receiver Chris Carpenter, neither of which are like the 6'2" plus wide receiver that you're potentially looking for New Orleans. But like anytime you get those guys out there, a lot of fun to watch. Villanova linebacker Brendan Bell, also like super athletic kind of guy. So looking forward to seeing him as well. And then for the tryout veterans that are going to be there, there's going to be 4 tryout veterans. Defensive back Terrell Burgess, who plays kind of this versatile game, has been around the NFL for a little while. Wide receiver Leon Johnson III, who was actually with the Chargers last year on their practice squad. Somebody to watch out for. 6'4" plus, big-bodied wide receiver. Let's see what happens there. A long snapper in Logan Flusman. I wouldn't be too worried about competition with Zach Wood just yet because somebody's over at rookie minicamp. You still need a long snapper during rookie minicamp, because you've got, guys that are going to be participating there. You've got a punter, all that. So that might be what that's all about. And then wide receiver Donovan Peoples-Jones, kind of a surprise there. 6'2", 200 plus pounds. Has had a solid season a couple years ago with the Browns, but then has kind of been off the map a little bit. 2023, he had a down year and then wasn't on the field at all in 2024. So we'll see what happens there. But those are some of the tryout players that I would definitely be keeping an eye out on as we get into rookie mini camps over the course of this weekend. So coming up in tomorrow morning's episode, just one more quick look ahead to what's going on for rookie mini camps. We'll also get you any more updates on the Derek Carr situation, New Orleans Saints, anything else that's going on. Maybe we'll have some details on those contracts as well. Super excited, super interested to see what's going to happen with the Tyler Shough deal. It's going to happen. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just excited to see what the numbers are going to look like. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. We appreciate you very much, as always. Make it as a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me on the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.